poetry, radio, verse. It's all about the D. Desire, discipline, dedication. I know what you were thinking, savages, but that ain't it. Let's go.
Transport people there and let people savor that. I think that poetry is a great way to support history.
In meditation, I've heard that you're supposed to notice the thoughts and let them flow by. Instead, I notice the thoughts and I say, let's take that out.
Welcome, welcome, and welcome. I am James Hamilton, and this is Versed. Versed is here weekly, shining a light on Midwest poets and artists from what we like to call the hub of Midwest poetry, Rockford, Illinois. The WBOM full-service radio studios are located inside the basement of the Mendelson Center for the Performing Arts. With me in the studio today is producer and cultural reference Savvy Magoo. How we doing, Sav?
Good afternoon.
Excellent. We've got Rachel. We decided you're engineer, right?
I think so, yeah.
All right, cool. Engineer Rachel. I know the magic of radio may make it seem like we're running ahead full steam with these weekly installments. We've had about a 3-week, 4-week break. Why do listeners care about that? Paul, what have we been doing the last 3 or 4 weeks?
I don't know. We went to L.A. for a few days.
You mean Los Angeles, California?
Los Angeles.
They actually let us in to like the biggest of the blue states, right?
Yeah, the most blue.
Yeah, we performed out there with Versed family member Twan Suggs. We had a good time. Represented Versed and Rockford
and Murder of Poets.
Murder of Poets, all of that. So
I mean, we appeared on a rooftop. We appeared on a soundstage, Hollywood, Burbank, all over L.A.
Couple of alleys.
Couple of alleys, yes, we did.
We were in a couple of alleys, yeah. And there's actually video proof of it this time. Not like back in the day. Anyway. At any rate, it's good to see you, Savvy. So, like I said, Rachel is our engineer. She is here, and we have guests, like usual. Yes, we do. We have guests. And I'm actually excited to introduce these guys. I know both of these guys pretty well. I don't know if they would admit that, but I'm going to admit it. So maybe I'm a little more excited than usual. First of all, we got down from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, who may or may not still be the Oshkosh Poet
I've got
Laureate.
a term for that.
You do? He's
Schrodinger's Poet Laureate.
Holy man. You just blew my mind. You just blew Is the equipment,
He'll explain.
Is the equipment working properly still after that electric comment?
Yeah, Tom will explain it after you finish introducing
We'll get through that. And then right down the road from Rochelle, you're still in Rochelle, right?
Still in Rochelle.
Yep, Luke Welch, everybody. So what I'd like to do is let you guys do your own bio. So we're going to start with Tom, and then we'll move to Luke. How does that sound?
Sounds perfect.
All right.
Yep. My name is Tom Cannon. I was the inaugural poet of Oshkosh, Poet Laureate. And they discontinued the program, but I'm going to call myself that until somebody stops me. Otherwise, I'm just your local, friendly neighborhood poet. If you live around Oshkosh, author of several books and poetry whenever I can.
When I met him, Tom said he may be the Poet Laureate of Oshkosh.
I like your term, though, Schrodinger's cat of poetry.
So do I. I love that. Luke?
I think I want to call myself the future Poet Laureate of Rochelle, Illinois.
Beautiful.
They just don't know it yet.
Aim high, baby.
Just start calling yourself that and wait till...
You got it. That's my title. I've worked as a sign language interpreter for 33 years, but during that time I've been off and on writing, and I send poems out to get published in little magazines and such, but have not yet compiled a book. One of these days. Once I do that, that's when I'm going to apply to be the first Poet Laureate
of Rochelle,
Illinois. We'll try that.
Whew. Right. Well, let us know if anybody here at Verse can help you. If we got to kidnap an alderman or something like that, we could probably put something like that
I used to know
together.
the police chief down there.
Probably just need to buy the right guy a six-pack.
Really. So Common thread, as our regular WBOM full service radio and Versed viewers know, every week on the show we bring in two of the best poets and artists the Midwest has to offer to just chop it up about whatever comes up. One of my duties as the host of the show is to curate the guests, bring you guys in, and pair you up. And when I do, it's because there's a common thread that exists between the two of you that, and I'm just going to preface this by saying this is something that I came up with inside my own head. So, scary place, I get that.
Yeah, no kidding.
It may not be what you think. And as such, in the previous shows before this, no one has guessed it right. I think last show they got very, very close. Very
Correct.
close, but I don't think we didn't ring the bell or anything for it. So as we do the show here, you guys just keep that in mind that there is a common thread. We'll revisit it more towards the end of the show, and I'll ask you, we'll see if anybody can get it right.
I know what it is already.
You-
We're both way too good looking for
That was
radio.
mine. I agree.
Wow. Wow, that goes for everybody in the studio then.
It was on the list. There's a reason why I do radio. I'm not even going to profess to be part of that club. There's a reason why I'm on the radio and not on TV. So just keep an eye on it, think about it, and we will revisit that at the end of the show. So let's talk about the scenes where I understand that Rochelle is essentially like the Rockford scene. So we could talk a little bit about the Northern Illinois poetry scene, what you guys see out there in your own individual scenes, and what you like about it, and maybe what you could see that maybe needs some change or some help. And we'll start with you, Luke.
Most of my interaction in the poetry community has been in the open mic community in Rockford, which I've loved. In general, it's a very supportive community, everyone holding each other up and everyone supporting each other's successes and triumphs and helping each other through. And that's been my experience. There are poets who choose not to participate in the open mic community, and that makes me a little bit sad. But I mean, they're out there writing, they're out there publishing. I would love to hear more of their work. I would love to hear them show up sometime and share their stuff.
Tom, what's your experience with open mics and poetry type showcases, stuff up in the, let's call it the Fox Valley, because it's Oshkosh is Oshkosh, but that's kind of part of a greater, larger community that is Appleton and Green Bay, possibly. So
Well, actually, it was just a poet laureate program, and they asked for people to nominate themselves to be part of that. And at first, I was like, I'm not going to do it. Why would I do that? And I thought, just take the chance. And that really led to me investigating, being part of the poetry community. And part of that was I went up to a Coca coffee shop with the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets. And there's some very lovely poems spoken, about leaves turning green and pets laying by the fireplace. And then James Hamilton came out and just blew everybody away with the rawness. And I'm like, that is cool. What can we do? And so I started an open mic in Oshkosh, and it's just so sporadic. The writers and the authors and the poets of Oshkosh kind of scattered, and they're kind of more to themselves. Those open mics were a lot of fun, but they were also very stressful. Just making sure everything lined up and that the coffee shop remembered that I was supposed to be there. But at the same time, what it really is just great where somebody, especially a young person, I have all these poems, and this is the first time I'm reading them out loud, and they would read them out loud and just be blown away at how they do it and the words that they say and the emotions that they conveyed.
Right.
It's just great.
I started out pretty much the same way and asked people about the scenes in their areas. And the consistency between what everybody says about their scenes is pretty much just the supportive nature of the crowds
Right.
at all of the open mics and how welcoming they've been, to new poets and things like that. Luke, I know you mentioned there's poets out there that you're not seeing at open mics.
Right.
And so what I generally will do is we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about page versus stage is what we call it on the show here and what I call it, but performance versus written or shouting versus ink, however you want to quantify it. Do you think that plays into it? And do you see that in this scene in particular here in Northern Illinois?
It's interesting. I value and am interested in both types of writing, and I will call them types of writing. And now, honestly, I have noticed myself as I've heard people present their work. I've noticed that, and as I've presented my work, I've noticed that myself, I've been evolving to do pieces that are a little more performative or have a nicer sound coming out than you necessarily get on the page. Honestly, on the page, you can do the same thing. It's just the reader will hear that in their mind. But I feel like my work has changed a little. Not all of it. Some pieces are still definitely page pieces, but I don't know. I really enjoy both. I guess. I don't know. I don't have a real.
I think I enjoy reading Luke's poetry, but also he seems to keep winning slams, so he must have some performance aspect.
Well, we can say that I had, was I on 4
Seven?
or 5?
Seven.
Well, I have 7 total, but I had 5 in a row.
Nice.
And until Luke actually unseated me earlier this summer. Yeah,
Right.
So.
Yeah, I remember that night very well.
It's one of those things. I look on the calendar and there's just a black spot. That's all I see. I don't know. I don't remember it that
Was
well.
I here?
I think those were your tears.
It could be.
Not to digress, but I won one once. It was a cold January and nobody showed up.
A win's still a win.
There you go.
A win is still a win. Tom, anything you want to add to the page versus stage? And I'll give a plug here to Dr. Gillard, who we get into the TV show
Right.
in a little bit, but great writer. Haven't seen him do a lot of performance stuff. What he does right. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the page versus stage type of thing. I think you have a unique perspective, is what I'm saying on that.
Yeah, I think that, like Dr. Gillard, that it's just sort of personal, and I put it out there, and maybe I'll submit it. And I'm one of those people. I like to have that little journal that came in the mail, and I get to put it on my shelf. And so I just don't think they know about the experience of the spoken word, of getting up on the stage, of practice, improving your poem through practicing it and really adding stuff to it. Like you said, 2 different ways: reading it, but also then speaking it out, and to feel the community, to hear other people's poems. And if somebody's new or they're nervous or they screw up, just to feel that we're here, keep going, we're there with you.
So, the interesting thing is, Frisia McKee is a poetry professor up at UW Stevens Point, and I've quoted this from her because I asked her the same question at an open mic that we do up there. And I said, what's the difference in your eyes? And she said, when we give a spoken word performance, we are essentially force feeding the audience. You're taking it the way that I want you to have it. In the way that I'm presenting it, much like a song. You can listen to a song twice or 3 times, as many times as you want, but you're getting it in a very static format. She said the difference between poetry on the page is time. She said I can spend as much time with a line or a stanza or a piece or a book as I want to, and that the meaning may change based on my mood and how she interprets it at the time. So I thought that was pretty wise.
That's interesting, James, because we were out in the other room with Denali, and I asked her if she had a copy of a piece she wrote today, because she had recited it, because I need to see it. I need to marinate with it and absorb it and think about it. And that's a different way. I loved hearing it once, but I needed the other aspects.
That's interesting. The only other thing that I'll add to this, and it was something that I didn't really know. I mean, everybody knows I'm a fan of Jack Kerouac, and that The Dharma Bums is probably my favorite book of his. I did not realize until very recently, and when I say very recently, I mean like this past weekend, that the poetry reading he describes in that book doesn't name Allen Ginsberg by name, but he's talking about the first time that night that Ginsberg read Howl. And the interesting thing about that is Lawrence Ferlinghetti, after Ginsberg read the poem for the first time, asked him for it transcribed, and that is the first time that poem was given to anybody and, transcribed. But Ferlinghetti felt the same way, apparently, that I heard it, but it was so dense he needed to have it in front of him and wanted it logged like that. I know the poetry reading that he's talking about in the Dharma Bombs, and I get all that, but I did not put the two and two together. And I have literally read that book like a dozen times, and it's on my Audible, and I've listened to it like 40 times.
So, James, clarify for me. Does that mean it was oral history until Ferlinghetti asked him for a transcribed copy, and that's when it became a written word?
Well, I'm sure that Ginsberg had it written down or had at least notes in a notebook or something before that. I mean, it's not really that much detail in there, but I don't know. Actually, you know what I would do with that? While you guys are in town, there's a bookstore right here in Rockford called Mays Books. When I have a question about the Beat Generation, the guy who runs that shop, Dave Peterson, is a walking encyclopedia. And actually, out of all of those beats, knows more about Gary Snyder than anybody I've ever met in my life. I mean, he is like, you will spend time there.
Yeah, I go in some afternoons for a seminar.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's really, really bright, cool guy. So we're talking about performing them or reading them, Tom, and you mentioned the people who, if you're not performing it, you're not getting that experience of being able to share with an audience or talk about. So what our viewers know, or maybe I haven't mentioned it before, is that before the poets come in, we record their pieces here in the studio, and then we do the show. That's kind of our process here. And today, you came in and you read a poem, and I had not heard it before, but it was about a little town of Sharon, straddling the Wisconsin and Illinois border, a small town. Can you talk a little bit about that? Was it called Small Town Hall?
Yes, yep. Yeah. And that's where I spent the first 5 years of my life. And my parents grew up there. They met in Sharon, Wisconsin, that little tiny town. I have all these stories. My dad tells me his stories of his youth and stuff. And even though he'll give me plenty of opportunity by repeating them, I started to write them down. And then I wanted to do something with them. And I think that poetry is a great way to report history, my own personal history, and a history of who we were at certain time periods. Literally, my dad grew up, and from the farm, he could throw a rock and hit the town hall of Sharon out in the country. And I just think that's a special place. And I wanted to go back and savor it and hopefully transport people there and let people savor that kind of small town farm life feel. Small Town Hall. The town hall of Sharon is a stone throw away from my father's heart, which makes it part of me. Around the corner and up the road was the one-room schoolhouse where it stands as it always did. And it reminds my dad of the game Throw the Ball Over the Roof. My dad loved his chore of fetching water from the neighbors next door. Within that tract of my father's core, 3 farms entwine. One was his grandparents', one was the renters', one where his siblings played shadow tag, where he milked the cows and his own children chased calves. A creek ran behind the farm. Dad once followed his sister to capture frogs. Near that creek was a group of trees, and the memory my dad wants to impart on his children is my grandpa, pheasant hunting. Birds flying from the trees so numerous he could not figure out which ones to shoot. In many ways, those farms are gone, yet what tranquility it gives me and my dad to let our minds tramp past the white barn, over the gnarled barbed wire fence tangled with weeds. Beckoned by the trickle of the creek, we stand with my grandpa in his brown vest, red plaid hat. Like my dad, my plan is to get a lot older, yet someday I hope to stand shoulder to shoulder with all that love that land. You have forgotten dusty roads, dogs flop down under the pine tree, cats loitering on the milkhouse steps, Dad out plowing, Mom working second shift. After school chores, throwing hay down from the mow, busting bales open in the manger, scraping the manure and then enduring the cold crunch of lime as you covered the floor. Dad opening the door to let Donna, Lulabelle, Becky, and the rest of them rush in with steamy breaths. Too often you neglected Dad's stories as he put a hand on a cow's back and shoop, shoop, shoop he had a milker on. standing in the doorway with him watching the evening sky. Him and me zigzagging 3 milkers across the aisle as the cows stared at the walls and waited their turn. WGN fading out on the AM radio. Too faded are the memories, so different was your life. Driving tractor, watching the ground roll by, and daydreaming. Haying season, the baler, a 3-piece band setting the beat. Loading the creaky wagon boat as it navigated the Alfalfa Sea, and returning atop the rustling cargo of bales. You kids will never have a small Wisconsin life. Run through a cornfield, race a bike down a worn path, then explore the cow-trampled woods. Feed a newborn calf, build a hay fort, run on sun-cured hayfields. Have dad always a walk away.
The added dimension to that when you're performing, because I experienced it today with you reading it. The cool thing about that was I got to feel all the emotion that you put behind it. You took me and put me there. Now, granted, I spent 6 hours, I think, in Sharon in my life, so I am familiar with the town, as familiar as one can be. For 6 hours. And in the middle 90s when I was definitely drinking way too much. So my memory may be a little fuzzy, but it rekindled it and made me feel it. And I think that's the essence of what you're talking about when you're sharing it. There's that added dimension. You had kind of mentioned it too, Luke, when you said you write now certain pieces to perform or to incorporate what I call performance aspects into it. Does it change, Luke, when you write? Like maybe I would use this word to describe it, but because I'm performing it, I'm going to use this sexier word?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No?
I'll use the sexy word in both. I notice I pay more attention to the meter and how it sounds. I like a nice rhythm when I read the poem, basically. And I did that less when it was on the page. When it was just a page poem, I would do that. But now, if I know I'm going to be reading it, I want to really hear that rhythm as I'm reading it. It's fascist season, and you know what that means. It's time to mask up like Halloween, because tear gas is falling in a misty rain that fills our throats with snot and pain and brings the water to our eyes as tearfully we say goodbyes to loved ones dragged away. It's happening this very day, and when the Iceman comes for you, he'll dress you up in black and blue, and then he's gonna zip tie you. He'll separate mother from child, and you know his boss is a pedophile. But it's those who protest who go on trial. If they don't get disappeared, because once you bear that terrorist stamp, they'll put you in a concentration camp. And you wonder, isn't this a lot for carrying a sign with one word? Epstein? Sorry, kid, that's a thought crime, and the icy pigs are making a dime, kissing the ring of their pedophile king. Yes, it's fascist season, and what's in style is anything other than the Epstein files. I want to feel that rhythm as I'm reading it. I notice I'm rhyming more, and it's kind of annoying me right now, because I used to avoid rhyme completely when I was first learning to write, and I would add a little rhyme here and there, but I learned that that was passé. We don't do that. But I think that's bullshit. now I realize that's bullshit. And now I realize that I love when I get a surprise rhyme in a poem, but now I'm even incorporating more rhyme in it. So I am noticing that I'm rhyming more now than I had been before. But from what I hear, the history of poetry, it actually started as a way for people to carry messages from village to village, and it was all oral. And the only way to memorize those messages or those stories was to rhyme them, to have some kind of rhyme, so that you could hold it in your mind and carry it to the next village and share it again. You probably know that history better than I do.
So you might go to another village and say, there once was a man from Nantucket.
I'm sure.
You know what's
I'm sure
interesting? You guys know I'm a huge believer in energy and no coincidences and things like that. I just want to throw this out there. Breakfast this morning, which consists of Paul and I, getting ready for the show at the counter at the Blue Box, talked about rhyming.
Right?
Yeah, this morning, right before all
Correct.
of this. And then what was the second thing? I totally lost it. That's my hamster ADHD brain going.
But we were talking about internal rhymes, rhyming a single syllable word with a multi-syllable word, and where the rhyming syllable would be in that
Like
word.
the middle of the word can have the rhyme and catch it up in there and stuff. And how, but the thing was that you had said, it's rhyming and it's kind of irritating. That's exactly what Savvy Magoo said.
I hate it when I rhyme. I detest
If it starts to sound like Dr. Seuss, I
Right.
know I'm in the wrong ballpark.
Right,
And
right.
I've got to try to.
I get sing-songy.
Yeah, sure.
Most definitely. So I do want to talk a little bit about artistic process eventually, but I want to go to this because Tom is not just a poet. You've got how many books now?
7.
7?
Whoa.
7 books. And your newest that just came out,
Is called No More Ugly Girls.
yeah, which he read a excerpt from about a week ago at the NAMI open mic up in Oshkosh. So what we're saying here about rhymes and meter and things like that, it's a whole different process when it comes to writing a narrative or fiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my pieces I found that kind of helped me focus on what the story was about, No More Ugly Girls. It turned into a poem where you're just kind of selecting things out, highlighting the important things. And you definitely want that, the same kind of meter to go in rhythm, to go fast and then slow it down, and quiet time, louder time. She embraced good living like a rainstorm. Having lost the need to wreck her innocence like a wave attacking a sandcastle, she only drank then and now to do the rain dance, hands outreached to catch droplets of peace. Alcohol and drugs had been a day at the beach that left her raw and burned. The rain turned cold. Maybe it began the week after the baby is born, when he stopped helping out. The gale of old boyfriends picked up, tore at her clothes, taunted her with whispered torrents. In the empty house, she tried to warm herself enough to stop shivering. Embraced by her own naked arms, good living trailed off her into puddles. What you're saying about rhyming, I think when you are going to submit to a journal or something, they don't want the rhyming and stuff. But I think rhyming is pretty popular at open mics. I think people like to hear it more. And, you definitely want to pay attention, even with the writing, to use the techniques like assonance and consonants and stuff.
Right.
Nicholas Gulig, which was the poet laureate of Wisconsin, he talked about how those techniques like rhyming and assonance and consonants help to tear down the walls between words. And I thought that was pretty powerful. And makes them more cohesive.
Yeah, definitely. Last year I did a memoir for a guy who would be considered, I think, in the crime fiction type of vein. When I write poetry, I love to do it in utter chaos. Like, you could have music going, television going, talking, and all kinds of stuff. Well, I do it driving, okay, so there you go. Yeah. Going on. When I sit down to take care of what I would consider a more narrative or literary type of project, I lock myself in a study room in the library, and it's like if a cricket goes off, I will get mental. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. Do you find, is there any differently, is your writing process the same for narrative fiction type stuff than it is for poetry?
I'd say it's about the same. Occasionally I'll listen to music, and they say that you really can't multitask. Either you're writing or you're listening to music, but it's nice to have that background music there. But I definitely have to have my own, spot, the same time period. Sometimes it's hard to write in the house because, the TV will come on or somebody will walk through the room. It could be kind of locked away.
Creative process for you?
For me, the best way to create a poem is to spend some time reading some poems or listening to some poems, whether it be on Audible or Yahoo or YouTube or wherever I can find some poems to listen to. And certain poems will put me in kind of a magical place where things become other things, and then I'm able to sit quietly for a little bit and words or phrases come into my head and I write them down, and it can become a poem that I never expected. But I kind of have to put myself in that magical place. Sometimes just going about my daily life, I'm not there.
Luke, I've had online conversations with you, Facebook
Yeah,
Messenger.
sure.
And it always seemed to me when you were in your creative moments that you had been up early and almost meditating, reading. Were you in that kind of almost a trance to write?
After I've read a few poems and I notice I feel like I'm in that place, then I will sit, like close my eyes, almost like a meditation. In meditation, I've heard that you're supposed to notice the thoughts and let them flow by. Instead, I notice the thoughts or phrases and I say, well, let's take that out, and I write it down. So it's the meditative state, except using it specifically to pull those little phrases and words out of the air. These hands, in the voice of a Special Forces combat veteran. The military taught me to use my hands to kill, to smash a man's throat until his lungs fill with his own blood, to rip out his voice box with the strength of my fingers, to snap a neck, break a back, to neutralize a man before he can scream or attack. But I'm home now, living with my pregnant girlfriend, trying. But my hands hang guilty at my sides, like loaded weapons, like bared knives. I don't trust them. I want to tell her, I want to reach out to warn her about the ideations, and I don't know how to tell her that I need to be gone to keep her safe. I could use these hands to numb myself with a bottle or a needle or a pill to make me forget, but I haven't gone there yet. I am trying to refrain, trying to retrain these hands, telling myself that these hands are for learning a skill. These hands are not meant to kill. You cannot have these hands. These hands can create. These hands can build. These hands can fix. These hands can make love. These hands are for holding babies, for petting cats and dogs, for throwing balls to my son, painting the walls of my daughter's room, not for ending my own life too soon. You cannot have these hands. These hands are not weapons anymore. These hands are not tools of war. I'm going to teach these hands to play music, to draw, to paint, to write poems, to carry my newborn home. These hands are for making life, for putting a ring on the finger of my future wife. I will use these hands to feel and to help the world to heal.
So each one of these first episodes, I mentioned a quote from Rick Rubin's book, A Creative Act, A Way of Being, and it's the first page of the book. It's a quote from Robert Henry. It says, "The goal is not to make great art, but rather to live a creative life that makes great art inevitable." I actually wasn't going to go because I have a ton of material I want to go over while you guys are here. But when you said that, and you said how you set yourself up for it,
Yeah.
I do the same. The hardest part for me was when I'm not communicating with that muse, and we get that doubt that I think all artists get, where it's like, do I have any creativity left? Will it ever come again? Can I write anything?
All my life I've had that.
Was living that life to be able to be okay with the downturns as I am with the upturns. Can you talk, Tom, a little bit how that applies to you? Do you try to cultivate a creative life to allow yourself to have that time?
I think it's accurate, but more just going about my business and suddenly think of a situation or turning of the phrase, or somebody says something, and then I'll write it down. And then at the time, I just get it out and then go back to it when I can. I teach kids and I try to teach them journaling, and journaling is very, very powerful. And I go, okay, we're going to journal for 5 minutes, and I'm going to journal too. I find this, and then I find it too when I'm just journaling, even on a Google Doc, is that my thoughts will come out in those short, terse, poem-like words, which will take a lot of editing, especially for me. If you're just kind of in the habit of it, then the words will come out kind of terse and hopefully a good starter place.
I'm just going to throw out there that terse is one of my favorite words.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Another quote, one from John Lennon, says that when writing a song, from the time that you start, you should try to write a complete, even if it's imperfect, first draft in one sitting. That you should not stop and try to break that up, because connecting or reconnecting to that type of inspiration can be difficult, and I think he used the term problematic. So I do a little bit of mentoring, and I talked to a guy yesterday on the phone, or day before yesterday.
Will Wright.
Will Wright, who will be a future guest here on Verse, and he gave me a 3-stanza poem, and that quote was kind of in my head, and I asked him. He was like, "They just don't seem to go together. What should I do? I don't know." And I says, "Let me ask you this." I said, "Did you write this in one sitting, or did you write this in 3?" He goes, "How'd you know I wrote it in 3?" I go, "Because they're 3 totally separate." It totally backed up the John Lennon quote. It was like I could see he was not connecting to the same source that he was connecting to when he wrote stanza 1. And he goes, "What do I do? Just throw it away?" I go, "Well, you got 3 pretty good poems there. 3 independent thoughts." Yeah, it was just one of those things.
But James,
yeah.
now we have to go back to the difference between performance and page.
Okay.
Because your stance towards those 3 disjointed pieces, in terms of him performing them, was different.
Well, that's true. So Will, if you haven't heard Will read, what I can tell you, you will hear on a future episode of Verse. Will is a dynamic poet. I would compare him to, he reads like me. He's very dynamic, okay? And I think he could have read those 3 verses. They start strong. There are some high points in there that he can hit with, using his voice and inflection and tools like that, and it ends on a high note. And what I told him was, I said, "Listen, your performance, the aspects of your performance, your talent is good enough. You could get up there and you could perform this piece, and people would go, 'God damn, that was good.' And afterwards, you could ask them what was it about, and they would not be able to tell you because it's disjointed."
Absolutely.
And the honesty there with him, he was like, "Thank you." He goes, "Because I knew it was." But that, it kind of shows me that the attention that we have to give to both sides of that art has to be, we have a responsibility to try to put out the best art that we can, or make authentic art that is the best that we can. And some of us are stronger in some areas than others. There's things that I have to work hard on that come very easy to other writers, and vice versa. So
If I may disagree with Mr. Lennon,
yeah.
Oh,
all right.
whoa.
how dare I?
At least it's not like he's going to come down and say, "What the hell?" Right?
Well, if he does, that'll be pretty cool. I'll let you know.
Be worth it.
Yoko will
We'll
come
talk
get
about
you.
that on a future show if
Yeah.
it happens. But sometimes you get most of the poem or the entire poem in one sitting. But sometimes you find yourself trying to force that ending, and it doesn't really come. Sometimes you need to leave it unfinished, and you have to keep coming back and revising, and eventually that ending might pop into your head. And sometimes you'll even just sleep on it, and it'll pop. You'll wake up and you'll go, "I know what the ending is." So I'd like to just add that with respect to Mr. Lennon.
So your subconscious is working on it, letting it, as opposed to what I used to be guilty of and probably still am. I'm writing along and I'm like, you know what, it'd be good if I take a break and then I'll research a word or check an email and stuff. But really what I'm doing is taking away the exponential brain power where you just kind of stick with it, and your brain just starts to really work into a groove, like you said. And
I think there's a difference between, I believe that the intention of that quote, the creative aspect of it, the inspired aspect of it, like let's say if it's a song, right down to humming a bar without even putting words, humming a refrain without even putting words in there, and getting something that gets the essence of the piece out.
Okay.
I believe editing is an entirely different process. Is it part of the creative process? Yes, but it may not be part of the inspirational process.
Cool.
Can we change a word to fit better that works with reading? Sure, we can. I don't think that that's there, but is the essence, the original essence of the piece, can we get that complete thought captured, even imperfectly, in one sitting?
But I think there is a danger of then sort of extending the metaphor too far, like Luke is saying.
Sometimes my metaphors take over and the poem becomes about them and their journey rather than the rest of the poem.
But you got to let them go, Luke, and you do.
I love them.
You have some beautiful
Metaphors
metaphors.
are in charge here.
For sure. So what should we talk about next? What I like to do, and I'd like to ask both of you guys about this. I haven't done it for a couple of shows. I have a ton of people or artists, ancillary people that are influences to me that are not writers. Tony Bourdain is one of them. He was a writer, okay, but, Frank Sinatra. So musical, painters, Caravaggio is one. Do you guys have artists or people, places, things in your lives that are not poetry or literary related that you turn to for inspiration? Let's start with Tom and then we'll go to Luke.
No.
That's not poetic.
But there is, it can be movies where the emotional part, the add in the music, really gets you right in the heart. And I want to strive for that in the written word. But otherwise, the closest I get to musician is Michael Perry, who's an author in Wisconsin, well known. He has a band, very poetical lyrics. That's as close as I get.
Mm-hmm.
As far as musicians, I might mention David Bowie and Bob Dylan as musicians. Neil Young, too, as musicians whose work
No bones to
feels
pick here.
very poetic to me. But also some fiction writers and even people like Stephen King and George R.R. Martin, who specifically I mention because I like the way they write in a manner that's so simple that the reader can just suck it up. And I like poetry that can do that, that doesn't put you up on an intellectual level where you can't feel what the author's trying to get you to feel. I like that everyday language, and some of my favorite poets also write using that everyday language.
That's art.
Rendering. I trace her ribs with my fingertips, lie my palm on her abdomen. I stamp her eyelids with my lips, then her cheeks, her mouth. In her home country, she was una recepcionista por un abogado, a receptionist in a lawyer's office. Here she works a production line, rendering pigs into parts. I could joke that she brings home the bacon, but mostly she brings home welts on her hands and arms where she's accidentally poked herself because the line was moving too fast and one hand jabbed or sliced before the other hand had moved aside. As if her arms are separate beings, two workers in competition. Her chain gloves keep the knife from penetrating, but her flesh is a map of bruises. If she complains about the speed of the conveyor, she'll be written up and told there are others lined up to replace you. And all day the dead pigs file past, and she grabs on to each one, rough, quick, no time for apology, and slices them into parts. She falls apart on the bed when she gets home. I put kisses on her welts, her bruises, kisses on her hands, on her shoulders, her hips, her breasts. She lies beneath me, and as I kiss each part, I feel nerve endings remember the way. Veins share blood with each other again. Tendons grip one another like comrades. Bones rejoin, and joints bend in unison. And she moves beneath me, surging, undulant, and is whole again, alive, vibrant, and ready to love, ready to fight, ready to fix this broken goddamned world.
I think for the creative process with me, it's, Miles Davis, somebody that improvised on stage, and when he did record and people would say, hey, could you play that for me? He'd be like, I already moved on to the next thing. The way that I approach open mics is I go out there and I want to do something new all the time. I mean, if you like something I do and you say, hey, James, could you read that piece? Well, yeah, I'll do it for you. But if somebody asks me what's your favorite piece that you've written, I say the next one.
Wow.
Every time. Every time. I'll say that. Yeah.
So I have to chime in here. For me, it's visual art a lot. I mean, I like music.
Facets.
But we just had Art Scene the Rockford Area Arts Council art scene. Fantastic, and I was inspired multiple times. Tonight at an open mic, we're going to have Jesse Leachy painting, and I have gotten inspired by different paintings of his, and of course Nathan Taylor here locally in Rockford. Just, I mean, his works blaze.
So I want to throw that out there. It was the fall art scene. It is something that they do twice a year, spring and fall.
Right.
And it falls on a weekend night, and you can go around to the various businesses here in Rockford and see that. Let me ask you this then, Paul. So it's called Ekphraxis, right?
Right.
Have you written a piece based on a piece of art?
Ooh. I've done it on music. I've been at concerts, shows, and written. Oh, I've got to think about it. I don't know. Let me think about that. Holy
You
crap.
think about it, I'll come back to you because I want to pose this to the guests too. So Ekphraxis, if you look it up, it says it is a piece of art created based on another piece of art. Mm-hmm. But then there's also ones that require that piece of art to be like a visual art. My question is it Ekphraxis if I write a poem about a song or about even another poem?
Oh, we just crashed. We just crashed everything in the system with that silence. You crashed everything, James. James, there is a gap here on the record. That was great.
Is that the 3-second gap?
Right.
So
right.
I'm gonna throw something else out. Maybe it'll help. We did a event for National Poetry Month 2025 where we each took a section of Ginsberg's poem, The Howl.
Oh, yeah.
And we took a few stanzas each, and then we wrote an original piece inspired by the piece that we took from the original poem.
Correct.
A more direct question would be, was that Ekphraxis?
And
I'm gonna go Luke first.
Yeah,
and then,
sorry.
I'm not really hung up on what the rule is for this or that. If I want to write what feels good, and if it fits into something or not, okay. That's why I don't write haiku. I like writing short pieces. I love short pieces, but I'm not going to count the syllables. I'm sorry. I'm going to write what seems like it needs to be.
You're not supposed to go first with the right answer, Luke. Gosh darn it.
Oh, okay. We're done now.
Well, we're all authentic, so it's all right answers.
Let's hear about Tom. Yeah.
Anything to add?
Just, I'm not very big into it, but we were at an open mic up in Appleton, and we happened to see a painting on the wall, and we just got together. Let's write a poem about that, and it ended up being very powerful for me. And then a friend of mine and a friend of James, DG Clearing,
He's been on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he's not, he should be.
Yep.
And he did this art war, and he drew a picture of a banana, a giant banana in the buildings, and he did it dressed as a banana. And I mean that I wanted to surprise him when I read my poem that based on that in front of him, but the poem was so much better because of DG inspiring it.
Correct. Nice.
Right. And
nice.
he just read that at an open mic that we had at the NAMI open mic.
I can't be everywhere all the time. Tom, I want to hear your stuff.
We did record it.
That is the same open mic where DG, who is a Versed alum, and was here for, I think, show 2 or 3. One
correct.
Of those. But he snuck a glockenspiel into an open mic and then allowed me to smack it with a mallet while he was reading.
Not play it.
Yeah, not play it. Okay. I mean, I have done drums before, and I asked him, you want me to go in rhythm? And he's like, no, I want you to not go in rhythm. I destroyed the mallet. I ain't gonna lie. The pieces were flying in the air, but it was powerful. And if you know DG at all, you know that he doesn't let you take pictures of him when he's performing.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's no evidence, which has a certain purity to it that I kind of
James,
love.
I have to go from that. That was Rockford Howls.
Yeah.
We did Rockford Howls here last year based on Howl.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was the smacking of a glockenspiel by many
Oh, I
beats.
see what you're saying.
Yeah, but it was and that was ekphrastic. I don't care. I'm not Luke. I don't care so little about definition, but I don't care what the definition is. And that was ekphrastic. So there.
So I mentioned earlier in the show we got a comment thread, It's not time to get to that yet, but I just want to mention it so y'all still thinking about it. But before we do, what I like to do is, so you guys, some of you come a long way, guests come a long way, or spend a lot of time here in Rockford. So what I like to do is I like to devote some time just to you. We call it the last word. It's that thing that when you were driving down or when you knew you were going to be on the show, you said, if I get on the radio, I need to make sure I say this. And I know we've had people like Pam Welch up in Manitowoc give a shout out to her mom who was sick at the time and things like that. So, whatever it is that you want the world to know about Tom and Luke, now is the time. It's your chance. The floor is yours. We'll start with Tom and then go to Luke.
The only thing I was thinking on the way down was thank you for the opportunity and to help to create this community, that's just so important. And we need more of it. We need more support in the area, and look out for the local author. They're not
right.
He's looking at book section, the local author, and buy a book or two.
Right. Maze Books has a great local author show.
I thought that it might.
The other thing, and I appreciate that because it happens on the local level. I have an idea where you're going to go, Luke, so this might segue into it.
Well, I don't even know where I'm going to go yet.
Well,
No,
what I'm
go
saying
ahead,
is
man.
we live in dangerous times. And, the open mics and things, those third spaces where we go to be able to share the work that we do. I call the poets and the artists first responders. I do. Mm-hmm. And Aubrey Barnes was on the show earlier, and he was part of a establishment down in Rock Island that was doing a great job bringing in out-of-town features, paying performers to come in, no censorship. It was a very inclusive crowd. It was great. And I just got a message this past week that it's going to close at the end of October.
Brutal.
And I was sad because we need more of those third places to do exactly what you're saying, Tom, is build community. So I appreciate that.
When the fascists came, two paths. Path one, the bravest of us were taken first. The ones who would not give up their freedom for their lives, the blood inside freed, finally, from its confinement beneath the skin. The rest of us learned to shut up. We took down our rainbow flags. We learned to wear muted colors and to cover our faces, hoping no one would remember who we were when we danced freely, when we kissed whoever we wanted to kiss in the sun and the rain. The world became gray. We double-locked our doors, covered our windows, sat quietly in the dark, and sang, just under our breath, the songs that were playing when we were in love. Path two. When the fascists came, we laughed. We held a party so big we closed the workplaces, the streets, the state, everyone gay and straight, homegrown and immigrant. We all wore rainbows and sang and danced and took care of each other. We didn't hide. We became big. We became brave. The tyrants had to hide their faces. They went back into their closets, but we knew them now, and we went to them and taught them patiently to know us and to love us. And in knowing and loving us, they came to know and love themselves. And the rain came and quenched the last of the fires and washed the remnants of hate and fear away. The sun broke free from the clouds, and even the sky decorated herself in rainbows.
Luke, last word.
Okay, you are totally right, because I was going to bring up your quote as calling the artists or poets first responders. I was going to bring that up. Now, see, I have a very spiritual perspective of life and what we're doing here. I do believe that we are fractals of divine consciousness living this human life. And I don't think that our deaths are going to be terrible moments. I think it's going to be a moment where we step aside and leave the body like you would leave a coat on the floor. So I'm not terrified of the politics that's happening right now, but at the same time, I feel like I need to pay attention because I feel like it's our responsibility to give voice, to witness, and to try to decrease suffering if we can. of the people in the world around us. And let me add, fuck ICE. Fuck
Thank you.
Trump.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I,
James, we're almost out of time. I just have to
Yeah,
let you know.
I know. We're getting there. We got the common thread, and we will go. You want to take a guess, Paul?
No, I don't. They both have glasses.
There you go.
I got it.
Okay.
We're both small town boys.
You got it.
Dang, that's the first time it's been guessed.
Really?
The first time
Wow,
anybody
good job.
got it right.
We're
Yeah.
both small town boys.
That's crazy. I actually
All my
had,
life
up
lived in
until
small
11
towns.
o'clock this morning, I had written down that you're both tall. I swear. But that was it. You're both small town boys.
And I lived in a small town in New York State, small town in Massachusetts, and then Sandwich, Illinois,
yeah.
and then Rochelle, Illinois currently. So always been small towns for me.
And the interesting thing about it is that when you guys did your poetry today, Tom's was, I wrote down 3. It was small town Hall, small town EMT, small town Wisconsin life. And I was like, somebody's going to get this today. I knew it. It was just like, here it comes. But
Yeah.
but yours were not. So I was like, well,
Right.
maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we'll.
Small town EMT. Every time I close my eyes, I see my father as I bring him back to life on the floor of my childhood home. My mother kneels next to him. She has to be the one to let him go. We squeezed and breathed the life back into him, trying to get him to float on the surface of existence. In every waking moment, I see him sink slowly beneath the waves. Where is he as the white-gloved men hand my mother the flag and tumble the spent shells into her shaking hands? He is not there. Lower whatever you want into the frozen ground. When I close my eyes, I see my father slowly assembling himself into the man I love. Only then do I sleep.
Guys, thank you. Thanks, Tom Cannon, who may still be the poet.
For all we know,
As far as you know, I am.
he is Schrodinger's poet laureate.
I
love
for
that.
sure.
I love
Yep. Thank you, Luke
you.
Welch,
That was
for
fun.
coming on the show, sharing your arts and your thoughts with us here, and the listeners at WBOM Full Service Radio over the radio waves and interwebs today. For Paul Savvy, Magoo Goddard, Rachel the engineer, I'm James Hamilton, coming to you from the basement of the Mendelssohn Center for the Performing Arts in Rockford, Illinois. Peace out. We'll see you soon.
I guess I'm asking you to tear away my scars with your teeth. Peel at them until your lips are red and you taste the iron of my blood on your tongue. I don't want to poison you, but I might ask that you dissolve my hurts inside you. The time of it all, the erosion of sand, the liquefying of a mossy log into alluvion. There's so little to look forward to, so little reason to sing about sad things. At this age, to put pen to paper is to create the reality of expired promises. I carry my cage with me, drag it like a wounded mollusk, hoping the slowest of movements toward satisfaction will be enough. Perhaps happiness is a tendril creeping up a wall. It clings to brick like it can't stand on its own, and in the end, it goes only so far as the wall lets it.
Vestigial. The wind spreads its wings horizon to horizon and glides over the cornfields, weaves through the trees in the park and through the cemetery and down the long street to press up against the house where it rattles your windows and peers in to see what you're doing. You're sitting alone in the light of the TV, remote in your hand. You're watching that movie about penguins, trying to understand why you can't fly. Why nothing you set your mind to ever seems to get off the ground. You waddle around to the refrigerator, pull out the tuna salad, plop the bowl onto the counter like a fresh caught herring. Your wings are just hands and you use them to make a sandwich. Your eggs hatched a long time ago, but your children rarely call, and their jobs brought them so far away. It's hard for them to come see you, or you them, the cost of a plane ticket so high. Again, that problem. You can't fly. But there are other things in life, aren't there? A job that makes you feel useful. They like you there, don't they? And maybe you'll be able to stay until you retire, and maybe you'll make it just under the wire and be able to draw your pension for a few years before you die. And maybe then, like the wind, you'll spread your wings wide and fly.